Hi everyone, I'm Attorney Poonam Minhas. I practice immigration law all over the United States. Today's topic is going to be about adjustment of status for parents of U.S. citizens who are 21 years old or older. We're going to break this video up into 4 parts, and I'm going to expand on certain things that have been brought to my attention. And I just wanted to share this information with you, thought it might be helpful. And if you do find this helpful and useful, please do share it with your friends and family. If this is not your first time here, make sure to hit subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated about anything I post on U.S. immigration law. And if you are returning back, welcome back. Let's cover today's topic. So the first part we are going to cover today will be interpreters for adjustment of status interviews for your parents. So if your parent has been scheduled for an interview to appear before an officer and your parent does not speak English fluently and you need an interpreter, typically and generally, USCIS may or may not provide an interpreter. Usually when they do provide an interpreter, they do contact them on the phone. They contact an agency to see whether they're able to translate the interview questions to your parents in their native language and back and forth in English fluently. But that's not always typically the case. There have been instances where if you fail to bring an interpreter with you, then USCIS will make a decision of rescheduling your interview to see whether an interpreter can be available in the near future. And then at that point, you won't be sure when that next interview is going to be scheduled. So you want to make sure you're prepared. And if an interpreter is required at the interview when your parents are questioned during their adjustment of status process, you just want to make sure that you're well prepared. Now, generally, USCIS expects interpreters to be familiar and fluent in the native language and in English so the conversation can be closely communicated. They don't expect you to do everything word for word. I mean, that would be the best bet, but if you are close enough to get that conversation translated, that should do the work. They do put the interpreters under oath. There are agencies you can contact where a person can come in and you would have to pay them a sum to translate. Or if you have someone that is a disinterested party, meaning that they're a friend or someone that you know can translate the conversation between the USCIS officer and your parent that can accompany you that day, that would be fine as well. But it's ultimately up to the officer whether they want to allow that person to come into the interview room to translate. But typically they're looking for someone who's fluent in the native language, in the English and the English language. And they're also looking for the person to be 18 years old or older and that they have no interest in that interview, meaning they're not the petitioner, they're not the attorney of record, they're not a representative. They're somebody who is completely disinterested in that interview and have no benefit to seek from it. And also, they want to make sure that the person that is coming in is in status. You don't want to bring somebody with you who has a pending asylum, for example. So those are a couple of things that I wanted to share with you. Don't panic if you do have an interview coming up for your parents and they are not ready to proceed because they don't speak English fluently. So do work extra hard in trying to find someone who can translate. And remember, even if you bring someone to the interview with you, like if you're in the waiting room, USCIS can just say, no, we're not going to use your interpreter. We are going to just use our own. And we have someone we can contact to interview during that session. But do remember, if your parents don't understand the translation during the interview, if USCIS officers use their own, then you want to maybe share that information because you don't want it to have a negative impact at your interview for the processing. The next topic we are going to cover for the adjustment of status process for your parents is going to be about co-sponsors. So I generally just want to touch this topic because I know a lot of children who are 21 years or older that are U.S. citizens are either in school full-time or part-time, and they don't make enough income to show support during the affidavit of support application process for their parents. As the parent and as the petitioner, you want to make sure you have someone who is a U.S. citizen or a green card holder that understands the dynamics behind being a co-sponsor for the affidavit of support. It's very important that you do have someone, if the petitioner does not meet the poverty guidelines based on the household size, to sponsor financially the parent that is supposed to immigrate to the United States. You don't want to wait until you have all the applications filled out and then you're getting RFE'd, and at that point you don't have a co-sponsor. You don't want to wait that long, because once you get a request for evidence, USCIS is now expecting you to turn over whatever they're asking, especially for the affidavit of support, saying, listen, you can't meet the requirements if you don't have a co-sponsor. If you do have a co-sponsor, make sure you provide their information so we can process this, and they'll give you a deadline. And if you don't meet the deadline, you'll get a denial, and then you're struggling with refiling, and it may be just a big mess at that point. So you want to make sure you're prepared ahead of time and you have the necessary documents, you have the signatures, you have the person ready and understands the nuances of filing for the affidavit of support and knowing what they're liable for and what they're responsible for when they are acting as a co-sponsor for the affidavit of support for your parents. The third part covers the type of questions that may be asked during the adjustment of status interview for your parents. So I'm not going to cover the actual questions today. I'm just going to hit the points that might come up. If you are interested in knowing more about the interviewing questioning process, please do check out my other videos that I have posted about the adjustment of status for parents of U.S. citizens who are 21 years old or older, and those videos might be helpful to you. So I do have the links shared in the description section, so please do check that out. Okay, so what are some of the things that they might touch on? So they would want to know whether you have intent issues as a parent. So was your intention to come here all along to immigrate to the United States, or was it to tour and then you change your mind? So that's very, very important. It also depends on like when your entry was, when you're planning on to file, or when did you file, because now you're at the interview stage. So you want to be careful that you don't have an intent issue. The other things they may look at is anything surrounding any type of arrest, or if you've been detained in the past or something has happened, they want to know about that. They also want to know whether you've committed any type of fraud or misrepresentation, if you have any issues with smuggling someone into the United States. They want to know whether you have applied for a visa and whether that visa had any type of restrictions. Have you ever been denied entry to the United States? They want to know a lot of the security questions. They want you to be open and honest with them, because somehow it may turn up in the future. And if you're caught lying or hiding certain information that they already have access to, that can ultimately lead into maybe a denial, maybe some type of post-interview request for evidence that you have a deadline to answer. There could be so many things that they might look into. And do remember, they will go through your immigration history if you already have one. So before you even apply or even get to the interview stage, you might also want to speak to an immigration attorney to see what issues might come up based on what you've experienced in the past. Like I know individuals who have entered here on one visa and then changed status on another, and then ultimately fell out of status, and then their child turned 21 and is a U.S. citizen and applied for them. You don't want to forget about the past. One more thing I would like to add is when you speak to an immigration attorney and you say, oh, this is a straightforward case, I have everything, there might be chances of you not having everything. I'll give you an example. There was a client that did come to me and said, oh, my case is straightforward. It's not much. It's just, filing the application. And believe it or not, the person did not have proof of entry. Proof of entry is very, very important. And the type of entry you had, whether it was a certain type of visa that allows you to adjust in the U.S. in the future, or there's a certain type of visa that does not allow you to seek adjustment of status. So you're barred from doing that. And you need to go through a different process. If you don't have proof of entry, that is going to be very difficult for you to then file an adjustment of status, because USCIS is going to come back and say, where's your proof of entry? How can you prove to me that you actually entered on the visa that you claim you entered? If you don't have proof of it, no I-94, no stamp in your passport, no proof, now we're leading into another complicated matter. So that case was actually not straightforward, but we were ultimately able to resolve the proof of entry part. So that's just something I wanted to share with you. If you run into this type of issue, definitely work with an experienced immigration attorney. So the last topic I want to talk to you about is the application itself. You want to make sure that you are not intentionally hiding any information, that you're being truthful about what is being asked on these applications about you. So as a parent, if you do have an extensive immigration history, if you have any type of criminal matter, if you have issues that you face with getting denied a visa at the consulate abroad or anything like that, you want to make sure you're honest about it. If you're not sure how to answer certain questions, then it's time for you to sit down with an experienced immigration attorney to make sure that you don't have any issues when you're applying for this type of relief. If you have already filed, let's just say you filled out the applications and you think you did everything to the best of your ability, you're not sure, and now it's time for you to go to the interview. Do remember the officer is going to go over all of the applications with you, depending on what type of interview it is, and you'll have an opportunity to make the corrections at that time. If you are still under the impression that you're not sure about what's going to be asked at the interview, you can hire an immigration attorney to do something called like a mock interview and go over the documents that you have filed to see whether there's any changes that you might make. And then at that time, when you go to the interview, whether it's with your attorney, with a representative, or you're going by yourself with your child who petitioned for you, then you want to be sure that you're able to answer questions at that time honestly. And if you made a mistake, you have the opportunity to correct it. So I just want to say they're not just applications, they're not just forms you fill out and you file and then you don't worry about it. There are very important things that are covered on the applications. And if you are found to have intentionally lied on an application, that's going to become a bigger problem. They may find you liable for fraud and misrepresentation, and now you're going to have to worry about a waiver to overcome that issue, and that's going to be a different topic in itself. So be careful, just be conscious of what you're filling out, what information you're providing. If you're not sure and you're not even at the stage of applying or submitting the applications, do sit down with someone you trust and that knows immigration in the United States and that can help you out. So again, I want to say thank you for, sitting here with me, going through the 4 topics in today's video about adjustment of status for parents of U.S. citizens who are over the age of 21. These are some things that I wanted to touch on because I've been approached about these topics many times, and I just thought making a video about this to educate all of you might be helpful. So thank you for watching. I hope today's video was helpful. If you have not subscribed, please hit subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated about anything I post on U.S. immigration law and any updates or news I have for you. And if this is not your first time here, thank you again. I'll see you soon.